Hello again, welcome to the fifth session in this series. We've laid a foundation over the first 4 weeks. I hope you've enjoyed working through the material, looking at the ideas and starting to develop a trajectory or track record in terms of your expertise as in publication and writing on a particular topic. This week we want to focus really specifically on connecting to the journal. So you'll write your material in various ways. You will have chosen the journal where you think you want to publish it. And then the next thing you've got to do is really important, is to start connecting to the journal. So now we're trying to get really specific. We're looking at that first journal article you're going to write. Now, although this applies broadly, you should always do this, and some of these details you should put in your research plan, particularly for the first year. But this is a way of ensuring that when you write something, you write it for the audience who it's intended. Again, as an editor for a journal, I get many papers which are not written to the criteria and guidelines that we set, and so we just send them straight back. The reason is not just to be nasty, but we get about 20 articles a week, and we have to read them, and if they're not ready to go, we just haven't got time to do that. So, specifically here, it's about connecting to your journal. And I want you to start thinking specifically about that first journal article you're going to write. So here's the outline. First of all, I want to talk about the journal and the details and requirements. Secondly, my suggestion is how to look at some articles. And thirdly, find some articles to cite. Again, this parallels the work that's in the workbook. And although this video gives you a brief overview, really the main activity for you to do is work through those tasks in the workbook to try and get underway with finding out where you're going to publish it. So the journal. Once you've chosen a journal, and again we talked about this last time, that it often will come from the journals you've cited in your study and that you've been reading. Find the one where it fits. Now again, given you need to be aware of the scale of your project. If you've got a really big project, sure, go for one of the top high-end journals. But if your study is a bit more modest, you might need to go for one of the ones that are ranked more in the middle. But have a look around and look at more than one. But when you find the journal, go to their website. They all have a website. And on that website, they'll have a range of details. And it's really important that you understand and appreciate what that says. So for example, if you go to the website for my journal, the Mathematics Education Research Journal, right in the very front it tells you what the focus of the journal is. And it's got 3 bullet point statements. And you can read them and it gives you a really good idea about whether your research is going to fit there or not. So the first thing is find the website and look at what the focus of the journal is. Read it, see how yours fits, and at this point you might say, oh look, this is an interesting journal, but I think I might try somewhere else. But have a look and study it carefully. It's not usually long, but it usually gives you a clear insight about what they're looking for. Second thing is look at who the editors are. Have you been citing any of the editors? Do you know their work? It's always good if you want to get published in a journal to cite and at least connect with the editors if it's relevant. Or perhaps more broadly, look at the editorial board. So any article that comes into a journal usually goes to the editor-in-chief, who then decides whether to proceed or rejects it straight away. They'll reject it if it's not well written, or if it doesn't meet the focus of the journal, or if it's not set out according to the guidelines of that journal. If the editor looks at it and thinks, okay, this is reasonable, they'll then usually send it to one of the other editors to manage. And again, they'll do the same process and then they'll start looking for reviewers. One of those reviewers will be someone from the editorial board. So, and usually that person is someone who's close to your field. So look at who's on the editorial board, because often that person will be someone who's reviewing your article. And if necessary, make sure you cite their work in your publication. The other thing you can often do in many journals is set out an email alert. And what that does is every time a new issue comes out, they'll send you an email which says, here's the latest issue and here's the articles. And it's a way of keeping up to date with that particular journal. So I would set up an email alert for any journal I'm thinking of publishing in. Now, there's always a section in the journal which says instructions for authors. This is really important, and often people ignore it. And again, if you ignore it, your article will be sent straight back without even being looked at. It'll say things like, what's the word limit? So some journals, most academic journals would be around 6,000 to 8,000 if you're lucky, 5,000. They don't want 50-page articles. Now the reason is, one, no one reads them. It's too long. They want you to get to the point. And secondly, if they're doing paper-based public, it's expensive to publish longer ones. So I would always try and stick to the word limit, or in fact, I'll try and go under the word limit, because once you get it back with the revisions, you might have to add more to it. So if the word limit says 6,000, I would try and write somewhere between 5,000 and 5,500 words if you can. What's the format? What referencing style do they want? Okay, so all these things are things you need to attend to as you write your article, because if you don't, it won't even be looked at. So what format do they want? Some of them have formats around structured abstracts. Some of them have formats around headings and style and things like that. A lot of them will have a template, so use the template to write it. They'll have style guides around line spacing, margins and all those things. Make sure you stick to them. I know it's not really about your research, but it's a really critical thing if you want people to read it. Also look at their referencing style. Do they use APA? Do they use Harvard or some other version? Often they'll have a template, and if they've got a template, then it's simple. Just make sure you use it. Pardon me. So the next thing to do is look at some of the articles. Okay, so go to the journal website and look into their articles. Hopefully your library has access to it. They're all on, almost all the journal articles, academic journals are online now. But search the journal, particularly around recent articles that might relate to your topic. Now, once you get them, first of all, look at what they feature. Do they emphasize the discussion and the findings? Do they really emphasize the methodology? The most common mistake I see people make is they make their literature review too long. Now, of course, you need a literature review and background, but they don't want more than half the article to be the literature review. This is about what you found out and what's new. So make sure you have enough literature to show you understand the field, and that you have a clear indication of the methods and methodology so they can be confident of what you've done. But they don't, for example, need a detailed explanation of the ethics application. But then the key part really is what you found out and discussing the findings and implication in robust detail against some sort of theoretical framework. But my suggestion is have a look at the articles. Look at how they're split up. How much space do they spend on the abstract and the introduction and those sorts of things? Is there a style or a rhythm or a genre to them that you can perceive? What is the language style? Do they have first person, or do they only write in the third person? What's the balance between the various sections? So once you write your article, this will give you a guide to how you should structure your article up. And we'll talk about that a bit later, but I use this fairly formulaically to try and get the headings and things in place so my article looks like the sort of articles that this journal publishes. So the next thing is to overtly connect with the journal. So if I'm going to publish in a particular journal, I will always make sure I've cite some articles from that journal. What it shows is I'm intentionally connecting with their audience, but and it also shows I'm relating to their field. So if you're going to publish in the Asia Pacific Journal of Education, then I would make sure I've got at least 5 or 6 references or more from the Asia Pacific Journal of Education. If you can, look to the work of an editorial board member if they're in your specific area, because those editorial board members are likely to be reviewing your article should it get to review. Also, consider the professional or geographic home of the journal. So most journals don't just exist in a publisher's space, they come from a particular research organisation or group. So, for example, in maths education, the most highest ranked journal is the Journal for Research in Mathematics Education. This journal is published in the United States. It has a very United States focus, and it is published by the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics. So I know the geographic home and I know the professional home of that journal, and that might shape what I write about. The journal I edit is called the Mathematics Education Research Journal. It's published by, its home is the Mathematics Education Group of Australasia. And if you go to their guidelines, they say you need to specifically connect to the Australasian Mathematics Education Research community. So it's really important to make those overt connections as much as you can. Some other things to consider. What's the ranking of the journal? Well, this is important for 2 things. One, if it's a really high ranked journal, your chances of getting published there are really small. So the one I mentioned before, the Journal of Research in Mathematics Education, they reject about 95% of the articles they get. And unless you've got a really substantial, theoretically robust, quantitative study that relates to the United States context, you've got no show. So the rankings, it doesn't mean just go for the highest one. It means know where they sit, and then sometimes I go for a middle one or a higher one or the top one, but just have a look around. It'll help guide your choosing of a journal. Check out how long does it take from submission to publication. Most journals are at least 12 months because the article comes in, the editor reads it, then we'll possibly send it on to another editor who will read it, who then sends it on to 3 reviewers. Now, just finding those 3 reviewers can take a long time because a lot of people don't agree to review. And then it might take them 3 or 4 months to do the review. Then you get them back. Well, we're already at 6 or 7 months and you might have to do major revisions from there. So be aware it's a long-term game. Incidentally, once you sign up for a journal, offer to be a reviewer as well, because they're always looking for people who will review articles. Another thing to check, does it cost to publish? Now, in general, I would avoid those that do, but having said that, there are some quality journals that do offer open access, and you'll have to pay for it, and it's quite expensive. If it's a reputable publisher like Springer or Routledge or Sage or something like that, and they're offering you to pay for open access, if your university will pay for it, well, okay, good luck to you, because what it means is anyone can read it. It's open to everyone, and you're more likely to get cited and read. But personally, I've never paid for open access. I don't have the money to do it, and it's just not viable. But open access is important if your project, if you want it to be read more widely. So now you've done all these things, now you know what you want to write, now you know where you want to publish it, now's the time to write. And so that's what we're going to be getting into from now on, actually starting to write something. So I hope these background sort of series of 5 ones to get you to this point have been useful. I hope you've worked through all the material in the workbook and you've in your study and writing groups, you're having fun together, but really grappling with big ideas, feeling encouraged as you embark on this journey. But over the next few sessions, we're actually going to start writing. And it's important that you write. It's easy not to write because you're not sure, not confident or whatever. But if you don't write anything, one thing's for sure, you'll never get published. So hopefully you're ready to get into it now, and that's where we'll be focusing from here on in. As always, here's our contact details. It's been fun for us working with you, albeit at a distance, but hopefully you're enjoying it and you're getting some productive work out of it. All the best.